Happy New Year's, everyone. I hope this video finds you well and have had a chance to have a relaxing and warm holiday season. I know I'm excited for 2026, and I think a lot of us can say, wow, every year is always interesting these days, it seems like, but I hope 2025 overall was safe, comfortable, and you had a good year. As we get ready for 2026, we're excited to see where the real estate market continues to trend. I think with some of the global uncertainty and everything that was happening last year, I think we've settled into that a little bit better. I mean, there's always new surprises around the corner, but we have a lot of optimism going into 2026, and so we're here and hoping to be able to be of assistance to you this year. But let's dive into some of the statistics from December, as well as kind of those year-end stats, as well as we look at 2025 in a whole and kind of again see how that compared to previous years. I'm also going to touch base on some BC assessment information. Most of you would have received your BC assessment notice of assessment in the mail, so some interesting notes there. And also talking a little bit about insurance, as I had another unique insurance situation come up this week. And I've been preaching this a little bit over the last few months that insurance, home insurance, is becoming more and more important to really understand the complexity of it, the costs of it, and some of the new requirements that we are seeing from insurance companies as the protocols and policies change and the criteria of what they're looking for. If you've been following these videos for the last 6, 7 months, obviously I've been doing a lot of synopsis and summaries as we kind of went into the end of the year. I did some predictions last month as well of some of the main topics and trends that I'm keeping an eye on. So make sure to pop back and check out that video if you want to see some of those predictions. But let's talk a little bit about where the year ended and kind of comparing some different things as we go into 2026. So as always, I always like to start off with the Victoria Real Estate Board announcement. I'd like to welcome Fergus Kine as the new chair of the Real Estate Board. Of course, I served as president and chair of the Victoria Real Estate Board in 2018. Very honored and very proud to serve in that role. And of course, one of the most important things is doing these market updates. So just looking quickly into December specifically. So we had a total of 367 properties sell in the Victoria Real Estate Board area. And that was actually almost 13% fewer than the 421 properties that sold in 2024 of December. And so we felt that out there. There were less sales happening. But the interesting part is that just because there was fewer overall sales, that doesn't mean that specific property types or specific neighborhoods or buildings that you are interested in didn't have sales that might have surprised you. So normally we do see that slow down as people get into the holiday mode, but there are buyers who have to buy for either job transfers, work things like that. But and then there's sellers who will stay on the market. These could be estate sales, people who really need to sell sooner than later, and they don't really want to wait around for the typical spring market. And a quick story that I'll share there. I had a client, a great client of mine. He was interested in this condo in a building. We knew it was overpriced when it first came out. We let it sit for a little bit. The price came down. We wrote an offer. We still felt it was overpriced. Seller didn't want to budge really on price at all. We let it go. We came back, wrote another offer after they did another pricing decrease, but still we couldn't get them down to the price point where we wanted to be and where we felt market value was. So we decided to let it go for a bit and trying to work on some of the seasonal activity that's out there. We decided to wait. And so we wrote an offer on Boxing Day. So, I try to take Christmas off and have those good boundaries around my work-life balance. But we thought, let's write another offer on Boxing Day. The market's going to be slow. The holiday season's kicked in. It's that fuzzy area between Christmas and New Year's where people don't really know what's going on. And we wrote an offer, and you wouldn't believe it, but another offer came in. And unfortunately, they ended up outbidding us by $5,000, and the other buyers got it. So I feel really sorry for my client. Both offers were below asking price, but that group was 5,000 more than us, and so they ended up getting the property and ended up selling. So again, hindsight, maybe he would have paid a little bit more, but it was a huge showcase that even on a day like Boxing Day, on a property that's been sitting for 3, 4 months, you could still potentially get competing offers. And this is that unique part of the market that is so hard to explain to people. Everyone wants to fit it into one box. And like I've been preaching and preaching over and over again, this is not one market. We are in a million different micro markets and even the timing of different things. So again, if you have your eye on a specific property, maybe you haven't even gone to look at it yet. You haven't reached out to me to take a look and you're like, well, let's let it sit for a while and see what happens. you need to understand, it's good to always go look at the home. And then if you decide that you want to wait, that's great. But then at least you're on the notification list if other offers and stuff come in on it. And sometimes, even though we feel that there's a specific value for a home, another buyer in this market may put a higher value on that property. And so you may end up losing that property to someone else who's willing to pay just a little bit more. Now, again, if you're okay letting that property go and there's more options for you out there, then that's fine. But you just have to not be disappointed if that property ends up getting sold to someone else because you felt, oh, it's going to come down significantly in price. Now that property I was just talking about, it did still come down, almost 10% from its original list price. But in the end, my client just didn't get that opportunity because of the story I shared. So again, just an anecdotal story about how this market, every day we're learning something new. Every day something different can happen. And so you can't just say, well, my friend told me this, my uncle told me that. This is how things work. When I bought a house 5 years ago, none of that always matters. Of course, I'm always giving you look backs in history to try to navigate where we're going in the future. But again, there's not a one size fits all for this. So just always reach out to me, or if you're watching this from somewhere else, reach out to your local realtor and understand what's going on so that you don't miss out on a property that you're really interested in. And so, looking at the overall sales for 2025, the year ended with 6,918 sales over the course of 2025. That was a 0.36% increase from 2024. So really just a pretty balanced amount of sales, year over year. And that's probably what we're going to see for the next little while here, unless there's something really drastic again that happens that pushes sales activity up, or something that brings sales activity way down. Now, I mean, we had those really hot markets during COVID with low interest rates. We had the much slower market in 2022 when interest rates went up. And so that caused a big adjustment in the amount of overall amount of unit sales that happened. And then now we've had kind of these couple balanced years, but we have this global economic uncertainty, right? Trades, tariffs, global policy, lending, borrowing, etc. So again, we're probably going to be in that balanced market, and I'll show you a couple of trends for that as well. But it's good to see that overall sales have been pretty steady. And so if you're a seller, we talk a little bit, the update here talks a little bit of how there is more available inventory. So if you are a seller, this is important to remember, is that you are not the only belle of the ball, let's say. You could be potentially in your hyper local market, but buyers have more options now. And so that gives buyers more choice. That also allows buyers to negotiate in different ways. So if you're a seller, and it talks about this in his write-up here, that you have to have your home ready to go. So, I work with some great stagers. I try to offer as many services as possible to help get your home ready and looking as great as possible. This doesn't always mean you have to paint your entire home. It doesn't mean you have to take all your furniture out and bring in big, expensive staging furniture, but it means doing all those little things, those little touch-ups and everything else. If you want to realize a very strong price for your home, it needs to be presented properly. But again, even that strong value that you're hoping to get, it needs to be realistic, right? I'm going to show you some pricing trends right now and some categories that may surprise you. But again, pricing needs to be sharp, or people will let your home sit on the market. So you need to make that decision. How long do you want to be on the market for? And even if you want to test the market, that's fine. But if you test the market and no one comes and puts an offer in on your home, now you've been exposed to the market for a certain amount of time. And even when you start dropping the price, again, if you drop it to an accurate level, you still may get a strong offer right away. But then other people who've been sitting on the sidelines may respond to that psychologically different. So again, you really have to understand your specific situation. How much time do you have? And again, if you are overpricing your home because you want to go and buy a more expensive home, you're not guaranteed to get that result. And so you have to understand what product you're selling, what product you're trying to buy. And there may be an opportunity that whatever you're selling for, that other property you're trying to get may be in a situation where you can get a better deal on it. But no one is going to overpay you for your home just because you need to go buy something more expensive. So you have to realize that the buyers coming in are going to be analyzing the market, and they're going to be valuing your home based upon what they're seeing in the current market, not just specifically what you're asking for. So we're going to dive into some of the core benchmark HPI prices. We did see prices in single family homes in the core soften, in some areas a decent amount. Condo market has started to stabilize across the board, still some ups and downs in some areas. And in the townhome sector, which we've talked about quite a bit, is continuing to perform pretty well too. So some great information here, which will be attached to this email. And then again, we're going to dive quickly into HPI stats. So I thought because we're doing kind of a year-end summary here at the beginning of January, let's look at the 12-month category right here. So when we look at single-family home prices across the entire Victoria Real Estate Board area, they came down 2.2%. And if we look at where they are from 3 years ago, we're up 2%. So the last 3 years has kind of just been balanced, right? But again, when we look at some of those core neighborhoods, we can see some unique price deductions in some of the most popular areas. 7.5% in Victoria, over 11% in Oak Bay. Now, again, if you're an Oak Bay home seller, doesn't mean that your home specifically has automatically come down 11%, but it means that the overall trends in those areas, our prices have come down this year. And again, Oak Bay being one of the most expensive areas in town, as credit and lending gets tighter, as global economic uncertainty gets tighter, we're not seeing as many people necessarily coming out from Ontario right now. Ontario has had a lot of negative effects with this trade war and tariffs and everything affecting the automobile industry. Oil and gas, things like that. So those people that are buying those executive homes right now are maybe a little bit slower. Now, again, there's still some great sales happening there, so I'm not trying to be pessimistic. But again, you have to understand the overall market trends when you're going to put your home on the market. Now, you bought your home years ago, you did some great improvements, updates, you're still going to get a value gain. It just, again, is not going to be closer to those peaks of 2022 that we saw before. So areas like Esquimalt, View Royal up about 1.5% to 2%. Saanich East down 4.3%. Saanich West pretty much neutral. Souk neutral. Langford neutral. A little bit of price reduction in Metchosin and the Highlands, and North Saanich as well, and Sydney for the single family home side. So really what I'm seeing here is the areas with higher benchmark home prices generally saw more of a reduction. And again, as the economy gets tighter, generally we see buyers trend towards those more affordable, more attainable areas where they get more value for their dollar, bigger homes, bigger lots. Now that might mean they have a longer commute, things like that. But again, we look at these price trends to see where is the market going and where are things functioning to. So some really interesting information there if you want to compare by municipality. When we look at townhomes, overall, pretty balanced, right? Sydney townhomes, which we talked about last month, performed very well this year. Again, Sydney is a very attractive market for both downsizers, baby boomers, retirees, but also young families and stuff now who don't necessarily want to live downtown. They don't want to deal with the commute of the West Shore, and they are looking at Sydney as a great location to set up. So some great opportunities there. And again, across the board, pretty balanced. And then going back to the condo market, again, we've talked about this. And again, if we look at the overall Victoria Real Estate Board area over the last 12 months, 0.7% increase. Okay, so pretty much balanced. But again, where did those different municipalities? Victoria, which of course ranges everywhere from downtown to Fairfield to James Bay to Mayfair Mall, still down about 3.9%. Again, some of those underlying factors that are still affecting this, the Airbnb regulations, which are still in effect, some different qualifying legislation on mortgages and stuff that are still affecting first-time home buyers. And then again, the downtown core is still having its challenges due to some of the homeless population, due to some of the economic factors there with businesses struggling a little bit right now. We see the government trying to bring more people back downtown to work, right? But they're pushing back and wanting to work from home. So as we see some of the storefronts and stuff like that, vacancy rate in commercial storefronts is on the increase right now. If there's not that same energy and vibe, especially in the downtown core, it will detract people from necessarily wanting to go there. Now, I still believe in our downtown. I think the city is trying to do as much as it can to make it feel a little bit safer, create that energy and vibrancy that downtown Victoria has had for a very long time. But it is a factor that's definitely affecting people's decisions. And I've done a lot for the community and everything else, and I don't mean this in any harm way, but I think people are making the decisions that they don't necessarily want to live downtown or in very specific pockets of downtown due to some of those challenges. So I think it's a reality we have to face. And I think there's a social conscious way of doing those things, but I think we do need to find a middle ground on some of that stuff. Vic West, where I am, one of my favorite neighborhoods in town, has performed very well this year. And again, I think some of that is, again, people want to be close to downtown, but maybe not right downtown. Vic West offers a great location for that. Oak Bay, condo prices down a little bit there. Esquimalt, View Royal, Saanich West. Like, you look at a lot of these other categories outside of um, Victoria proper, and they've all performed very well here again. So again, people want to live here, people want to get into the market, and this is a great sign for the rest of the condo market that we are seeing some strong increases here. So again, if you're thinking about selling your condo and you've heard a lot in the news, condos aren't doing great, you have to remember, like I've said before, a lot of that news is coming from Vancouver and Toronto, but it dominates the national headlines. Now, again, there are some micro markets within the condo segment that are a little bit more challenged depending on when you bought your home. But if you've owned your condo for, 5, 6, 7 years now, you're going to have gotten some good appreciation over the last 3 to 5 years, especially if you've owned it for more than 5 years. You can see some of the price growth over here in this chart. But if you bought, at the peak of the market in 2022, you can see that we're still down 8% again in the Victoria area and some of these other municipalities. So again, condo market is starting to perform better, but there are still challenges depending on when you bought and where you bought. So again, always reach out to me if you want an updated evaluation. But if you're in some of these areas that you can see there's been some strong price growth in the last 12 months and in the last 3 years, if you are trying to upsize in the market, now could be a really good opportunity. And this isn't about overpricing your home to move up in the market, but if you bought your condo in Saanich East up near UVic, 5 years ago, and you had potentially a 40% increase in values or more, and then we look at, say, the Saanich East or the Oak Bay single family home market, and you're wanting to make that jump from a condo to a single family home. Well, your condo price is up a strong amount in the last year to 3 years, and that those prices in some of those neighborhoods on a single family have come down. So this could be the great opportunity where you can jump across in the market, get into a single family home market that's a little bit depressed right now, sell your condo at a good time, and then take advantage of when those single family home prices start coming back up. There's going to be some great opportunity for you there too. And again, just quickly looking at historical price trends, this goes back all the way to 2005 when this data started becoming available. I've talked a lot about feeling like we are in kind of this market right here, this little bit of an up and down, like the last recession from 2010 to 2015, or I wouldn't call it a full recession, but this little bit of an up and down kind of flat market. And if we look at where we are here, really since the peak of 2022, the overall Victoria Real Estate Board region here, so we can see all the price drops of 2022 into 2023. And then we've just kind of been in this up and down factor. But again, when we're referencing single family homes, again, that overall trend is still trending down a little bit. But again, if we look at the West Shore, it's balanced out a little bit. So again, we have to understand when you bought your home, if you bought back in 2017, even in 2021, if you bought in the beginning of 2021 to now, there's still some good price growth. You're just not going to be able to realize that great price point there. And okay, so some of those other trends will be available in the attachments to this video. So I've already hit 18 minutes. I know I can talk forever, but I hope you find this information useful and valuable. I will continue to try to make these videos shorter. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about was looking at BC assessment. So if you haven't gotten your BC assessment in the mail, go online, type in your address, and see what they've done with your valuation. So far, in talking to people, assessments are all over the place. I've talked to some clients where they've had a reduction in their price value by 14%. And I actually sat with my client the other day and we put a call into BC assessment to try to understand why the condos in their building had that reduction in value. And the only really rational answer they had was that there was one other comparable sale in the building that showcased a bit of a reduction in prices, but they use that as their whole rationale. Now, that condo that did sell had some challenges with it. And without going into too much detail, it faced onto a busy road. There was development across the street. The floor plan wasn't great. It needed some updates, everything else. So that one sold as kind of an anomaly. Yet my client's condo has had some recent updates. It's on the nice, quiet side of the building. So like such a difference in the actual properties that what they provide, but yet BC Assessment just took all the units, reduced them by 14%, and said that's our common trend. So she could go through and file a formal appeal, present evidence and everything else. And we are potentially looking at that because we have talked about potentially selling later in the year. Now, as we always say as realtors, the assessed value does not equal market value. But of course, you may differ with me, and I have lots of clients who say, "Well, I look at assessed values as an overall trend, and they'll make calculations and comparisons of assessed value versus market value." So it's interesting because again, this is really important to some people. Really, your assessed value is really the taxable value. It is supposed to be a number where the homeowner feels comfortable enough and the municipality feels comfortable enough with that valuation so that they can apply their local mill rate and charge you property taxes on that. So, but again, when you're buying or when you're selling, that assessed value becomes a lot more dominant of a conversation. So, I'd love to hear from you. How did your BC assessment come in? I've talked to some of my clients in single family homes, and even though I've shown you that prices have come down in a lot of those more core municipalities this year, most of my clients in those neighborhoods so far have been reporting that their assessment went up. So the market's actually showing down where assessment's going up. And even with those, that property I was just talking about before, the overall market trends on the HPI for her given neighborhood was prices were down about 3.5%, yet they equaled them at 14 based upon one sale. So it's not a perfect science. I do have a lot of respect for BC assessment, but definitely please review your assessment, double check the information, make sure it's accurate. And again, if you're going to stay in your home for the next 5, 10 years, well, then you don't want your assessment to be too high because you're going to pay more property taxes because of that. But if you are thinking about selling in the next few years, again, it's not going to directly impact your property, but it might, because some people will still look at assessments as a very accurate or very close to accurate idea of your market value. But even though the market may show that your home is worth a couple 100,000 more, you might get buyers who don't even come look at the property or something because psychologically they think the assessment gap between list price and assessed value is too big. So it's just something to think about as you review that information. And again, if you have questions, please reach out, call, text, email me anytime. I'd be happy to walk through that with you as well. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about with insurance is I have a deal closing tomorrow. And we've been having all this heavy rainfall and everything here on the island. And of course, we've been paying attention to the news, and we've seen that the Fraser Valley has had flooding and some other issues there. And there was states of emergency. But my client, she was going to finalize her insurance policy at the end of last week. And with all the heavy rain, there was actually a flood warning for Victoria and southern Vancouver, or the Vancouver Island as well. If there is an active state of emergency or active warnings from the federal or provincial government, you can't get an active insurance policy. So she was told on Friday, we may not be able to insure this home until the flood warning is removed. So of course that raised some triggers. We may have to extend this deal by a couple days until that happens. Now, luckily, the flood warning was lifted this week. The insurance policy was able to be completed. And I think I've talked about this a little bit before in the summertime about this kind of issue in the Okanagan, where I'm from and do a little bit of business, that during fire season, generally you cannot, if there's active forest fires in your region, you can't get insurance. I thought that was a little bit more localized to the Okanagan, but now we are finding out with some of these heavier rainfalls and everything else, if there's an active flood warning. So again, when you're buying and selling your home, make sure you talk to your home insurance provider as soon as possible. You need to understand the implications, because again, if she couldn't get insurance, then she wouldn't be able to finalize her mortgage, because one of the terms of the mortgage is that you have to have active insurance. So again, we have clauses and things like that to protect you in these cases, but in this case, this came up at the last minute. So anyway, just something to be note of. Again, home insurance is very, very important. So I'm going to leave it here for now. As always, there's going to be some extra articles, some different real estate articles that I find that I think are useful and informational. So take a look at those. All the attachments from today's pricing trends will be attached as well. And we always include some fun events that are happening here in the greater Victoria area. So anyway, I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to 2026. I have some great goals set for this year, both business wise and personal. I'd love for your help in trying to achieve those goals. So if you know anyone looking to buy or sell, I would absolutely love and be grateful for your referrals. Almost all of my business is built on repeat business and referrals, and I love working with clients, friends, and family. So I would love that opportunity to be able to get your assistance in that. And if you need help with anything, if there's something I can help promote, an event or something going on, a program, let me know. We want to get more involved in the community this year. I'm actually going to be excited in making some announcements soon with a charity that I'm going to start helping out with, that's passionate about sports, which of course I am too. So I'm really looking forward to this year. I know it's going to be a great year, and I hope it's going to be a great year for you too. So anyway, take care and talk soon.